I've been living abroad for over a year now, and I left Canada and moved to Mexico. And I'm starting my second year living here. And I want to talk about 5 myths about how dangerous Mexico is that I no longer believe. These myths are pretty common. You kind of grow up hearing them all the time, especially when you don't grow up in Mexico. Whether it's through movies, TV shows, media, family, friends, or even online. And when I say myths, I mean things that you're taught or constantly told, ways of looking at Mexico that get drilled into your head if you're not actually living here or if you've never visited. Every country has its own version of this. Stories or stereotypes about other places, and Mexico definitely has its share when it comes to safety. And there are 5 big myths, in my experience, that people outside of Mexico really believe when it comes to how safe it is here or how unsafe Mexico is supposed to be. Number one is Mexico is dangerous everywhere. This is probably one of the biggest ones you hear, that Mexico is dangerous and that danger is everywhere. And it doesn't matter where you go, which city, which town, you're at risk. It's kind of the default thing that people believe. Like comments like this left on a video I made in the past. It says, "You start with noise, you think you start with the drug cartel, kidnappings, and murders. Noise, lol." For a lot of people who live outside of Mexico, this is what they think when they think about Mexico. Let me give you another example. A friend came to visit me here in Mexico recently, and the only question he had to ask me before coming was, "Do you have to worry about the cartel?" Seriously, that was the only question and concern he had. I'm not judging though, because I had those thoughts before I came for the first time to Mexico, well, to Mexico City. The kicker though, unlike my friend, I'm a seasoned world traveler. And even though I had a feeling that Mexico wasn't how it was seen on TV or movies, I still was a little concerned. This idea is really pushed hard everywhere you see it in the headlines, in movies, in travel advisories, all kinds of media. And after a while, it kind of feels like the fact it's right, like something you just grow up accepting. But once you come to Mexico and actually experience the life here, you start to realize that's just not true. Mexico is huge, it's massive. It's a diverse country made up so many different cities, states, and regions. And the idea that it's dangerous everywhere, that everywhere is unsafe, no matter where you are, is straight up a myth. I'm not gonna sit here and lie to you. There are areas in Mexico that are dangerous, and you probably shouldn't go unless you really have a good reason to be there. It's just like US, Canada, or Europe. There are neighborhoods or regions that you shouldn't just go. I grew up in a so called bad neighborhood in Toronto. And if someone randomly started wandering around that neighborhood and they didn't belong there, people would start asking questions. So, in some places, if you don't belong, just don't go. But the truth is, the vast majority of Mexico is peaceful, full of people that just want to live normal lives like you. And even in those so called no go zones, it's not always a crazy war zone full of bad people looking for these bad things that you expect. Nothing in the world is just black and white. Like I said, I used to believe this myth to a certain level too. And to be honest, if I think about it, it's kind of embarrassing, but I get it because we're all brainwashed to think we know certain things before we even experience them. I recently saw a friend's post on Facebook that he'll never go back to Mexico, meaning resorts, because when people talk about Mexico, they usually talk about resorts. Anyways, he was saying that he won't come back because he wasn't allowed to smoke anywhere. So he had to smoke in the ocean. Now, another friend commented and said, next time you should go to Croatia, because in Croatia, you can do anything and smoke anywhere. And plus, you won't get shot at. LOL. LOL. Yeah, he said that. I want to help change this mentality because after living here and seeing daily life firsthand, I realized the belief that Mexico is dangerous everywhere is simply not true. Number two, you can't trust police in Mexico. The idea that you can't trust police in Mexico, this is something I believed 100% before stepping on Mexican soil. And this is also a thing that a lot of people believe. Someone left a comment like this on another video. It says, the Mexican president literally mobilized the National Guard to not only disarm the police, but take the job of the police in response to the cartel civil war. Now, people love to spread rumors. It's just what they do. And that's exactly what this person is doing. It's just a rumor, nothing more. But here's the thing about the comment. The president didn't mobilize them to get rid of the police or replace them, not the local police. He created the National Guard in 2019 by combining the federal police, military police, and the naval police. The local police still exist in Mexico. He did this because he said it would be better to tackle organized crime and that it was more efficient. In no way did it make Mexico some kind of military state. The comment isn't, it's just not true. The police in Mexico aren't so corrupt that they just need to be abolished. This idea that all of them are out to get you is something everyone believes without even questioning their beliefs. There's a huge police presence in my neighborhood, and the only thing they do to me is wave. And of course, they keep the neighborhood safe. Now, I'm not saying there isn't corruption here. There definitely is. Corruption exists everywhere, though. I've seen and heard stories about police corruption back home in Toronto, even. But this myth that you can't trust any police officer in Mexico ever, that they're all out to scam you or cause you trouble, isn't true. I've heard stories that if you get pulled over here, for whatever reason, it's just stories because I've thankfully never been pulled over here. But apparently you can slide them a couple hundred pesos. But now, especially in Mexico City, that's becoming a bit more difficult because they have a new system. If they pull you over, they have to call their supervisor to come with the pay machine and you have to pay the fine right there. They've done this to try to limit corruption as much as possible. Also, the police patrolling outside of my door, they're there for safety and they're not the ones that pull you over. There's two types of divisions, which I find pretty interesting. The reality is, most police officers in Mexico are just doing their job. They're not looking to shake people down. Most of them are not focused on foreigners, trying to hassle you every chance they get. Number 3, foreigners are constantly targeted for crime. The idea that as a foreigner, you're automatically targeted, it's not true at all. 99% of people think that the second you step foot in Mexico, you're going to get robbed, scammed, or even worse, simply because you're not from here. And after hearing that enough, you start to think it's true. You start to assume that being a foreigner is automatically makes you vulnerable, that you'll be targeted everywhere you go. But after spending a year and a half here, spending time walking around, living a normal daily life, I've realized that's just not true. Most Mexicans really just keep to themselves and don't bother you, unless there's someone walking around trying to sell you something. But in that case, they leave you alone if you say, no gracias. I have gotten scammed though. I bought a micro SD card off Facebook Marketplace and it ended up being a fake. It actually didn't even work. But I wasn't targeted because I was a tourist. I was scammed because I was being way too cheap and didn't buy a real one from the store. I knew there was a chance to get scammed. I should have just paid for the one at the store, really, and stopped being so damn cheap. The reality is, of course, there are crimes and scams, but most crimes aren't random. And it's not aimed specifically at tourists or foreigners. Most Mexicans don't care if you're from another country. They're living their own lives, working, going to school, taking care of their own families. Most of them aren't lurking around waiting to take advantage of someone just because they're not from here. I've taken public transit, walked around all kinds of neighborhoods, gone shopping and visited a bunch of small towns around Mexico City. And not once did I feel that I had a target on my back because I was a foreigner. I've actually had more trouble with people trying to scam me in places like the Philippines, Thailand, or even Paris. Mexico gets a worse rap than those places. I love Thailand, the Philippines, and Paris, but I just don't feel like there's a target on my back here as much as those places. Mexicans get a bad rap, but in my eyes, they are some of the nicest people in the world. And like you might have noticed, I traveled a lot in my years. Maybe this experience is only with me in Mexico. Let me know in the comments if you guys had a good or bad experience here, or if you've been here or not, and what you think about this country. Number 4. It's unsafe to go out at night in Mexico. Once the sun goes down in Mexico, it becomes some sort of vampire action movie where the night automatically equals danger and you shouldn't walk around after dark. You should lock yourself inside and not risk going out whatsoever. It's something you assume automatically, I guess. You just kind of accept it as fact for some reason. It becomes one of those rules you think you need to live by. But I've realized it's not true. Places like Mexico City, Guadalajara, and Merida, You'll see people out at night all the time. Life doesn't stop just because the sun goes down. It actually, some nights it might get a little bit more spicy. I go out at night all the time and have fun. Okay, not too late because I have a 16-month-old baby, and during the day it's pretty tiring. Now, obviously, like anywhere else in the world, you need to stay aware. You avoid sketchy areas, you keep your eyes open, and don't go looking for trouble or anything illegal. That's just common sense. And these are rules no matter where you are in the world. But this idea that Mexico becomes automatically dangerous the second it gets dark, it's just another myth. And actually, after seeing how people live, how vibrant and active things are, even at night, I no longer believe this myth. Number 5. The cartel controls everything in Mexico. This one gets pushed the hardest when it comes to myths about Mexico. And like I said earlier, this is what my friend was concerned about before visiting. The idea is simple. The cartels control everything in Mexico. The cartels are everywhere. Daily life for regular people is completely shaped by cartel violence. That you can't live a normal life anywhere here. This is something I used to wonder before moving here. But let's be honest, the media outside of Mexico pushes this narrative hard. Every time Mexico comes up in the news, what do you see? Cartel violence, headlines about drug wars, stories about crime, shootings, kidnappings, and even Trump is talking about having a war with the cartel at the US border. So no wonder people have this fascination and belief about cartels and Mexico. Crime, shootings, and kidnappings are super popular comments on my other videos about Mexico. They're by viewers who have never stepped on Mexican soil. I don't blame them for believing it, because after seeing what the media pumps out over and over, you start to think it. No, you start to believe it. Let me just say, yes, the cartel exists. No one's denying that. There are definitely certain regions in Mexico where violence is serious. It's a serious issue. I'm not going to deny that. But the myth that the entire country is under cartel control, that they affect every single aspect of life, that you're constantly surrounded by war and violence everywhere, that's the part that's completely blown out of proportion. The vast majority of people in Mexico, they go out and enjoy their lives. They go to work. They take their kids to school. They hang out with friends. They run errands, eat out, take vacations. Normal, everyday stuff. And for most people here, cartel violence is not something they see or deal with on a daily basis, or they don't ever see it at all. It's not part of their reality. And honestly, you wouldn't even know who was a member and who wasn't. It's not like they walk around wearing name tags like they work at McDonald's. This is the ultimate myth about Mexico. And once you spend time here on real Mexican soil, not just the resorts, this myth gets erased out of your mind before you can even spell cartel. These myths are based on deep-rooted old racial ideas that were spread about Mexicans just to keep them down. And I'm not gonna let this happen anymore. After hearing these lies enough, we don't even question it anymore. And the truth is, we should be questioning more things that we're told, not just believing the first thing we hear and taking it as truth. Like many lies we're fed over and over again, none of it lines up with reality. Now, honestly, I could keep going. There's probably 10 more myths that I could throw in right now. Actually, maybe even more. One of the biggest ones that still blows people's minds is the fact that statistically, you're safer in Mexico as a US citizen than living back home in the US. Yes, seriously. People don't believe it because, again, it's not what they've been told their whole lives. And I actually made an entire video breaking that down. So click it right here and I'll see you over there. Thanks for watching.